BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Phil Goodlad, and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. It's Thursday, the 31st of October. Happy Halloween, the morning after the night before.
Might break to Thelin, off the post, chance for Morris, goal for Morris! Aberdeen back in front, it is Aberdeen 2, Rangers 1, and what a moment for Shayden Morris!
What does last night's 2-1 victory for the Dons mean for Aberdeen and Rangers seasons? Also,
the group is really close together. I think you've seen that tonight. Even though we weren't at our best, we managed to get a positive result. But we know we need to improve. We know we are improving, but it's a process, and we're all sticking together and working as hard as we can. And I just have to concentrate on the next game.
A valuable away point for Hibs. It sees them off the bottom of the table. And
Machinilla's in one-on-one here. Can he tuck it away? Oh, he digs it over to goal! It's a lovely finish. He digs it over the goalkeeper, Walton. 2-1 to Motherwell.
Motherwell climb up the Premiership to 4th after a deadly double.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Great to have you along this morning. As ever, after a full card of fixtures, it's a really busy one, so we will just crack on if you don't mind. Gary Scott is the co-host of the ABZ podcast and a man who we cannot wipe the smile off the face this morning. Gary, morning to you.
Morning, Phil. How are you?
Would you like to give me a scale? Like, would you like to sing me Do, Re, Mi or try and tune your voice? Because it sounds very croaky this morning after your night at Pittodrie.
Yeah, a little whiskey this morning maybe would have been the best bet before coming on here. But yeah, a little bit croaky and a couple of knees are in a bit of pieces as well after that second goal last night.
Yeah, the good old days with the BBC. We might have given you a whiskey at 6:30 in the morning. Not now. Cammy Bell, former Rangers and Kilmarnock keeper. Cammy, we have a couple of your teams to speak about this morning. I would imagine one, though, will get more airtime than the other.
Absolutely, Phil. Again, the story is, listen, you can't take it away from Aberdeen. They were absolutely fantastic last night, but Rangers, they're in real trouble at the moment. Absolute turmoil at the club, on and off the pitch. So, yeah, loads of talking points this morning.
Somebody who rises above the petty machinations of being a club man is Daniel Caw from the Daily Record. He is the sobering voice amid a frantic morning of look back. Danny, if you were to give us one headline from last night in the Premiership, give it to me.
I'm under pressure now. Look, the only show in town really was Aberdeen and Rangers. An incredible result for Aberdeen. I'm still kind of, I wouldn't say in shock by it, but still kind of taking it in. It was a remarkable game, all in all.
We'll get to it. There's lots to discuss with the guys, as you would expect. Before that, though, a quick romp through the Scottish football headlines. Rangers manager Philippe Clement says an offside toenail cost the Glasgow team an away point at Pittodrie. In his post-match interview, he said those moments are not on our side at the moment. FC Michelin owner Anders Holch is understood to be looking at investing in Dundee United. That's according to one Scottish newspaper. The 51-year-old Dane is the UK's largest private landowner, an estimated net worth of £9 billion. And Clyde could be back playing in good old Glasgow after the club has revealed they've submitted an expression of interest to take over the Glasgow club Hag Hill Sports Complex in the East End of the city. They've been ground sharing with Hamilton at New Douglas Park for the last 2 and a bit years.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Right, let's start where else but at Pittodrie. Jimmy Thelin says it's still too early to say it, but Gary Scott from the ABZ podcast, are Aberdeen now genuine title contenders?
I'm going to have to follow the manager. We need to keep it game by game. I know it's really boring for everybody in the media to say it, but it's only 10 games into the season, but what a start to the campaign it's been for us. And who knows, if we can keep this running, maybe, but let's maybe see where we are in the back end of April, start of May, when the business end of the season really kicks in.
I appreciate that you want to follow your manager, but why not follow BBC Scotland's chief sports writer Tom English, who finally last night admitted on air, do you know what? This is the real deal. We have got a title contest.
it was good to hear Tom finally being converted to the red side last night, I thought. But yeah, I think, it's great. It's great for the Scottish game, isn't it? Let's be honest, to have a different story, something different happening at the top of the table. And at the moment, we just seem like an irritation that maybe won't go away at this moment in time. Let's just see how we keep going through. Like I say, it's still early days, but I think it's probably fair to say now that we've definitely been tested, I think.
What's really interesting this morning, Cammy Bell, is there is, of course, headlines written by Aberdeen. The unbeaten record goes on under Jimmy Thelin, but almost now equal billing is the crisis that's developing for Philippe Clement at Rangers. And that crisis, you would imagine, will only intensify ahead of this weekend's League Cup semi-final against Motherwell.
Absolutely, Phil. Yeah, there is a crisis. You've got to use that word at the moment. When you watched that display last night, again, it was toothless, it was lacklustre, no energy, no idea, to be honest, on the pitch. Just for so long, they've just got over the line this season. And there's no style of play. That's been mentioned a lot under Philippe Clement. And yeah, it just looks like the players are really flat at the moment. And they're miles behind Aberdeen. Aberdeen, again, you've got to give them credit. They were absolutely brilliant last night and fully deserved the win.
Danny, speak to me about how journalists sharpen their pencils at the prospect of a big story developing. So we already have a big story in Scottish football terms, Aberdeen's run. But it also feels like we're edging towards something at Rangers with Philippe Clement and his future. And that's not me just scaremongering, because the reaction of the fans at Pittodrie last night in the away end, when Clement and the Rangers players went to their fans, that seemed to suggest something more than just an anger on the night.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you touched on it a moment ago, Phil, with the toenail comment that Philippe Clement made afterwards. And when he came out and said as well that it was one of Rangers' better performances. And I mean, Cammy, you'll know firsthand the pressures of playing at Rangers, and the fans aren't stupid. It's when, you can see on the pitch, it's pretty dire to then come out and try and kid them on. That's when alarm bells really started ringing for me last night. It's still really horrible to see a guy clearly giving his all and it's just not happening for him. But you're kind of getting to the stage now where it's hard to create an argument to keep Philippe Clement, as kind of horrible as that sounds. I know a lot of Rangers fans say, look, we can't just keep sacking managers. But if it's not the right manager, maybe it's the best thing to do.
And I'll get to Cammy Bell in a moment, Cammy, because obviously you've been in a situation where managers has come and gone. But Danny, just take me inside the sort of the process that a newspaper will almost begin to ratchet up the pressure. I mean, is it simply a case of the journalists putting two and two together and realising that we're not going to come up with any other number but 4 if Rangers continue their run of defeats?
Yeah, more or less, to be honest. I mean, look, we all know if Rangers were 9 points behind Celtic at this point of the season, it's very bad. But to be 9 points behind Celtic and Aberdeen, I mean, it's almost unprecedented. I mean, it's there for everyone to see, I guess. And like I say, when the Rangers or the Celtic manager, or any manager to be fair for that matter, start saying things in post-match press conferences that you've not seen in the pitch, that's very telling, I think.
Cammy, did Philippe Clement have a point last night when he spoke about the toenail being offside? Did he have a point last night when he said it was one of their best displays of the season?
No, not for me. Again, if he thinks that's one of the best performances of the season, Rangers are so far off it. Because it didn't flow. They didn't have control of a game. And yes, Aberdeen are a very good team, but Rangers, I expect a good Rangers team to have control of the majority of the game. They had hardly any control of that game, probably a 20-minute period after they scored. And again, Aberdeen weathered that storm pretty well. So I just think, I totally agree with Daniel. I think the Rangers fans are now listening to Philippe Clement after the game, and I think he's delusional the way that he's talking. What he's trying to put over to the press and to the fans, I think is completely the opposite of what we are seeing on the pitch.
Do you know, just on that as well, I don't know what you guys thought, Gary, particularly being there, but see when Bajrami scored that goal, and it was a brilliant goal, I kind of thought, Rangers have equalised here, it's going to be backs to the wall for Aberdeen, it's going to be like the Alamo, but it wasn't. Obviously, it wasn't at all. And that, to me, was very interesting, that even with the prospect of maybe even winning the game, the Rangers players couldn't drag it out of themselves to the performance they needed.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, having been at Pittodrie in that type of situation so many times before, you start to have that horrible feeling of, oh, here we go again. We've been, well on top. In particular, the first half. I thought our first half display was an excellent performance by Aberdeen last night. And I think Clement can talk about the offside as much as he wants to talk about it. Aberdeen should have been 3, maybe 4-0 up at halftime. That game should have been dead and buried in that first half last night. And I was surprised actually that Clement took Bajrami off when he did. I thought for the 10 minutes running up to the goal, he looked Rangers' most likely scorer, and they got the goal from that. I think that helped us a little bit as well, actually. It helped settle us down. And I think what you've seen a lot from Jimmy Thellin's side this season so far is that there's that calmness about him. Like, no one on the pitch looked panicked last night when Aberdeen conceded that goal. Everyone looked like we knew what our jobs were. He made a couple of tweaks again to the formation. And even more importantly, I think the fans stayed with the team last night again. And again, that's not something we've seen at Pittodrie for so many years, that unity between team and the stands. And I think that goes a long way to what we're doing at the moment as well. So, yeah, I was surprised at that point the Rangers didn't really try and force that little advantage they had at that moment in time in the game over the line. And then they kind of seem to sit back themselves and almost think, actually, a point here is maybe a good result for us. And, and then I think we get the just rewards for making positive changes again.
Gary, one bookmaker this morning is offering odds of 9-1 for Aberdeen to win at Hampden this weekend against Celtic. This is the same bookmaker that gave odds of 3-1 for Aberdeen to beat an odds-on Rangers last night. Are the bookies wildly wrong at the moment going into this weekend's match against Celtic?
I don't know. I don't know about that. Again, it's a difficult game for us at the weekend at Hampden. Our record at Hampden against Celtic in cup semi-finals and cup finals is not great, particularly in recent years. The game at Parkhead a few weeks ago was an absolute doozy. The one thing I would flip that on its head is to say that I think we're unbeaten against Celtic now in all competitions in the last 3 games, and we gave them a real good scare in the Scottish Cup semi-final last season when we were a team who were, very much trying to find our feet again under Peter leaving. It's a very different prospect that Celtic have got coming to Hampden on Saturday evening. So I don't know, 9-1 feels big, but how often do you see a poor bookie?
Gary, we're going to let you go, but just before I do, just sum up for the non-Aberdeen fans amongst us, or indeed the non-Pittodrie going people amongst us, to just explain how special that atmosphere was last night at a packed Pittodrie under the lights.
I mean, so for Aberdeen fans of a certain vintage, everyone will talk about Bayern Munich 1983 as being, the greatest night at Pittodrie from an atmosphere perspective, and maybe only Copenhagen and then Munich again in that UEFA Cup run in 2007, 2008 maybe matches it. Last night, I've been going to Pittodrie now for 35 years. Last night was unbelievable. I have never heard the place like that. And when the second goal went in, I'm not ashamed to admit I've probably ended up about 5 rows away from where I started, and my knees are shot to pieces as a result of that this evening. So that probably
get him banned. Get Gary Scott banned from Pittodrie for leaving his seat.
It looked like Galatasaray or something. See when the teams come out, it looked incredible. I wish I'd been there. But
it was class. It was really good, and the club deserve a lot of credit for that as well. To be fair to them, they've kind of really ramped up their engagement stuff with the support this season, and they've got like a full-time guy in doing like displays and stuff for every single game, and it just helps to build just an atmosphere and a feel-good factor around the place, and it's making Pittodrie, as hilarious as it probably sounds, the place to be in Aberdeen on a Saturday at 3:00. So yeah, it's all good.
Gary Scott, we'll leave it there. ABZ podcaster, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Moving on, it was a big game for Hibs and their under-pressure boss, David Gray, last night. Danny, as far as your view looks at David Gray, that's now 2 points in a row that he's collected. Do you think he's turned the corner with a stuttering Hibs side?
Well, that would be a big call, Phil, to be honest. We mentioned just before we come on air there, I said to Cammy that I think it's scandalous where both Hibs and Hearts are. And I thought the one thing that would at least be sorted out when David Gray came in was that Hibs' defence would maybe be a lot more organised, a lot more compact. if anything, it's been the opposite. I mean, I know they didn't concede last night. That goal they conceded to Hearts at the weekend, if you're a Hibs fan, that would just drive you up the wall. So yeah, for those two teams to be the two bottom teams in the division going into November, it's just mad. I just don't know how how they have found themselves in this state. It's bizarre.
I was speaking to a Hibs fan, season ticket holder, who takes his two kids along every week at Easter Road, and he was saying that the problem he feels with having a club hero in charge is that nobody wants to address the elephant in the room, and the elephant in the room being, if you are inexperienced and haven't managed in your own right, even at another club, and I know that David Gray's had time at Hibs in interim charge, but that the elephant in the room, it's almost disrespectful to this icon of the club to actually approach it and say, where is the experience that you can get us out of this?
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. And the other thing as well, from a journalistic point of view, I mean, I've been in David Gray's company a couple of times, and he's just a lovely guy. He's a really nice guy, and that makes it harder to criticise someone just on a human level. But I mean, I would look beyond David Gray at this point, to be honest, because how many Hibs managers have not gone well? And that's not to say David Gray won't recover from here, but I just thought Hibs were crying out for an experienced manager in the summer, a big personality, someone to come in and really take the place by the scruff of the neck. Not to say, as I say, not to say that David Gray won't eventually do that, but yeah, the first couple of months of the season haven't been great.
Yeah, good point for Ross County at home to Hibs last night. Cammy, let's speak about Kilmarnock. 1-0 at half-time against the resurgent Hearts, it seemed, under new manager Neil Critchley, who was undefeated. I actually thought this could maybe get a bit nasty for Kilmarnock, especially if Lawrence Shankland starts to get in the mood and rediscover his form from last season. And yet, why did I ever doubt that a Derek McInnes side could turn things round at half-time and go on to win the game?
Yeah, it was brilliant from a Kilmarnock perspective last night. Again, being 1-0 down, as you said, Phil, at half-time, you probably looked at that scoreline, the way that Hearts have kind of turned around under the new manager, that would go on and win that game. But yeah, it just shows you Kilmarnock never give up. They've got some really good players in their team. Matty Kennedy, obviously, scoring the first goal to get them back in the game. And then that man, Kyle Vassell, that leads the line so well, so important for Kilmarnock. A huge, huge player, captain, massive character around the club. Gets the vital goal, and it's a huge win because Kilmarnock look as if they've turned the corner a little bit. They obviously struggled at the start of the season with the European football, which they're not used to experiencing on the Thursday night, and then having to play league football at the weekend. So it looks as if Derek McInnes has got his players back on track, and I think they'll be looking at that top six and trying to push into that again.
Yeah, and just a word on Hearts. When a new manager comes in, Cammy, and you get a bounce and you go a couple of games undefeated, how big a disappointment then is it to lose, and almost that sense of, oh no, here we are again, sets in?
It will set in for the players, yes. I think they'll be quickly reminded, certainly by the fans, of their form this season, and the league table doesn't lie either. So I think the manager have learnt a lot from last night, especially being 1-0 up at half-time, and how his teams not went out the second half, performed well enough to go and get the 3 points, because they need to make Tynecastle a fortress. That's what they need to do first and foremost. Win the home games. They've got some good players in their squad, but I'm pretty sure the manager will get right over time. Give it a few weeks, and I think he'll have them back firing up on all cylinders. They've got some really, really good players, so I expect him to get it right. But it's not as easy as that, because, listen, every game in this league's difficult to play, and I think it's very competitive this season as well.
Celtic still top on goal difference from Aberdeen after a stodgy 2-0 win last night, Daniel, at home against Dundee. And I say dodgy because the first half, they had a couple of big chances, but Dundee stuck in, held it together, and maybe going out for the second half, you thought, I wonder if the big headline of the night will come in the East End of Glasgow.
You know, I think you're spot on, Phil. I was covering the game last night for the record, and at half-time, I did think that. I did think everyone's been thinking about Aberdeen Rangers. Maybe here is where the surprise of the night will be. You're right, it was a very stodgy first half. I still am trying to work out how Kyogo didn't have at least 2 goals at half-time. The chances he missed in the first 5 minutes were criminal. But as we so often say with Brendan Rodgers' side, they came out in the second half. They got the job done. I thought Arnie Engels was particularly good in the second half. And in the end, they just had too much quality for Dundee, who I thought actually did really well. They were really organised, worked themselves to the bone. And on another night, perhaps they could have got away with a point, but yeah, just too much last night for them.
Yeah. And looking at the table this morning, Cammy Bell, apart from the obvious headlines, is the sight of Motherwell in 4th place and just 3 points behind now Rangers, who they meet at Hampden this weekend.
Yeah, they've had a brilliant start to the season. Stuart Kettlewell, for me, is a fantastic manager, and I always reflect back to that period where they had a long spell without a win. The club stuck by him, and they're reaping the rewards now, because I think he's built a really good squad this season. He lost a few players, big players, during the summer. And I just feel as if he's building momentum at the club. They've been brilliant so far. And again, that was a huge result for him last night. And as you say, looking forward to the weekend, that gives them huge confidence, knowing that they're playing a Rangers side who are on the ropes at the moment.
Yeah, Motherwell 4th on 16 points. Dundee United, who they beat last night, 5th, a point behind United. And Hibs meet this weekend, which on paper at least looks to be very tasty indeed. Finally, the Battle of the Saints, St Mirren running out 3-1 winners against St Johnstone. The one thing that I liked with this, Daniel, from a sort of a headline point of view, is that was a St Mirren performance that they had to deliver, especially after going behind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was really happy for Stephen Robinson as well, because they've had a bit of a kind of sticky patch in the last couple of months, but he's a brilliant manager, a fantastic coach. And yeah, like you say, it was a much needed victory last night. When you saw them go behind, you thought, oh God, here we go. But no, credit to them, they come back. From what I understand, played really well and deserved the 3 points.
Mm-hmm. Cammy, just finally, and just to go back to Rangers, given your time at the club, given how much you know the fans expect, what happens next, finally? Now, I'm not in the business of asking people, do you think the manager should be sacked? Because I think that's disrespectful. But draw me a timeline towards Hampden this weekend and after the trip to the national stadium when they take on Motherwell in the League Cup.
Yeah, Phil, it's a difficult one. First and foremost, they need to win at the weekend. There's no getting away from that.
This is a must-win game for Philippe Clement this weekend. Must-win game.
There's no getting away from that. If he loses at the weekend, he will go. I fully expect him to leave the club if they don't win at the weekend. I think he's under huge pressure at the moment. That gap to Aberdeen is unacceptable, and that's taking nothing away from Aberdeen, what they've done this season. 9 points isn't good enough to be sitting behind Aberdeen and Celtic at this moment in time in the league. So he needs to win at the weekend. He needs a big performance as well. And yeah, I still think after a win at the weekend, he needs to show the club and the fans that there is a future going forward with him.
Phil, you said it there about being disrespectful, and I definitely, I feel that as well, that, you don't want to see anyone lose their job, obviously. But, Cammy said it there, if they don't win at the weekend, even if they turn in a monumental performance and somehow lose in penalties and miss a hatful of chances, you're at a point now where it's really difficult for Rangers to stick by him. I know that there's no appetite from within the club really to get rid of him, because they don't want to keep doing that, but no, I think you're really at breaking point if they don't beat Motherwell.
What I would say, Phil, is that Philippe Clement's got the opportunity this weekend, I presume, that to put on a performance and get a big result to try and change it. But I feel like time is running out for him, and he's got to know that as well, that you've got to win games of football at Rangers. That's what the club's all about. They must win at the weekend, or I think his time's up.
I would just say as well, just on Clement, I don't know what you guys think, but I can't recall another manager, particularly for either side of the old firm, to recover from a position like this. I don't know if you guys can think it. I don't think there is any in the modern times. To be 9 points behind, as I say, Celtic and Aberdeen, to recover from that would be an incredible feat if Philippe Clement can do that.
It'll be the focus over the next few days in Scottish football. I can promise you that. Rangers and Motherwell meet in the League Cup semi-finals. Aberdeen and Celtic as well at Hampden. For now, Daniel Caw from the Daily Record, Cammy Bell, former Rangers and Kilmarnock player, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Earlier we heard, of course, from Gary Scott, didn't we, from the ABZ podcast. Croaky after a raucous night at Pittodrie, but unable to keep the smile off his face, as well as maybe many Aberdeen fans will be this morning, level on points once again with leaders Celtic. Remember, whatever happens over the next few days and whatever is going on in Scottish football, you'll get it right here, the Scottish Football Daily podcast. Subscribe with us, follow the podcast feed, or get it from BBC Sounds. For now, though, I'm Phil Goodlad. We'll speak again soon, but enjoy the beautiful game.
This is the shocking moment English football has been dreading.
My name is Moses Swabu, and I used to be a professional footballer. But then I got in deep with organised crime and became a match fixer operating in the English League.
A match-fixing investigator has highlighted 2 matches he says appear to have suspicious betting patterns.
How honest are you going to be with me?
This is 100%. Join me for Sports Strangest Crimes presents Confessions of a Match Fixer. Listen on BBC Sounds.